Good evening to everyone and welcome you all for today's lecture. Sorry for the interruption or the delay we had due to this power interruption. I'm Kamala Gunadhan again, fellow representative of the council. Can you hear me?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm checking again I was taking, yeah. So today is the webinar. Today's webinar. This is a continuation of the last week and three-dimensional modeling under this medium rise buildings and designs and constructions by Professor Jayasinghe, Dishan Jayasinghe. And this is the 12th lecture for the series. As I mentioned last week, if anyone want to go through the previous lectures, please type ISL media and you can reach all the previous lectures. So you will not miss out. Before start today program, again, I will remind you, just please keep your mics muted unless you need to ask a question or discuss some matters. Thank you for that. Since you all are now very familiar about the Civil Engineering Sectional Committee activities, I reserve the time without explaining what we have to do, but I request you all to keep in touch and keep your interested field topics. So actually we are conducting so many different subjects, and so it will be very important to you all. So please don't miss and join the activities. Thank you. Today we'll start the event right now. Professor is there. So I invite our eminent personality, Professor Dishan Jayasinghe, to share his knowledge with you all under this very important design and construction subject of medium rise buildings. So without further ado, I invite Professor Jayasinghe, Senior Professor of University of Morocco Civil Engineers Department and our Chairman of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, to share his knowledge delivering this lecture. Please enjoy this evening. Thank you, everyone. Professor, over to you.
Can you all see the white sheet?
Yes, sir, you can.
Okay, right. So last time we talked about modeling of buildings, and we talked about how to convert 3D to 2D. And with that, we learned just one more. Today I had a failure in my hard disk and I had to set up everything fully. This one, now what you see is upside down. This one is setting to be video and okay, now it's okay, right? So I have changed it to that option which says mirror my view. So basically now with this, we learned a very important concept, that is what you analyze is not actual, but it's not actual, it's a mathematical model. It's a mathematical model. Now, for example, let's assume that we have a beam as a large beam, say 1200 by 1100. So, for some reason we have selected a depth of 1200 and we have made it wide, say 1100 millimeters. And let's say we have a shear wall coming and resting here on the side. And center is here. The shear wall thickness is 200. I'm using this. So here you get 550 millimeters. And the center of the shear wall is at 450 millimeters. Center of Henry is at 450 millimeters. So how do you model this beam? Now, if you look at a simple program like SAP 2000, what we do is we model the center of the beam, but we have to ensure that this load is applied at a distance of 450 millimeters. Now, there may be some options in the program, but what I prefer is having a rigid arm. So you can have a rigid arm, and one option is to say the rigid arm is also having the same dimension. Rigid arm is also having the same dimension. But if you are going to say rigid arm is having the same dimension, then you have to define a new concrete material. Why? In the actual structure, you get only this, but in the model, now you get this, and then you get a rigid arm here. And that new concrete has a density. What is the density of that new concrete? It's zero, close to zero, 0.001 kilonewtons per meter cubed. It has should have a very low density. Why? Otherwise, you are adding an additional density. And what can you say about the mass of that concrete? Mass is also very small because this is not a real member, this is a fictitious member. Fictitious member. This is not there. This is a member that we have added. So which means you have to be very careful when you are doing modeling. Don't add extra mass, don't add extra weight. Now, what is the reason for not adding extra mass? What do you mean by mass of the structure? What do you mean by mass of the structure? Mass is needed for dynamic properties, and weight is needed for static properties. So if you want to see the natural period of vibration, what do you need? You need a very accurate mass, and distributed in such a way it is pretty close to its actual distribution. So just because you add additional members to represent the stiffness of the structure. Now here, why we have a rigid arm is to show that we have a stiff connection. And if that stiff connection is loaded at the end, then the beam can rotate about its own axis, which we call twist. So the beam can twist, and how you represent the twisting of the beam is by having, how do you represent the twisting of the beam is by having a rigid arm and loading it at the end. But in the actual structure, there is no rigid arm, it's embedded in the structure. embedded in the beam. So make sure you allocate zero mass, zero weight. The reason for telling this is there may be some structures where you have number of rigid arms, and if that is the case, you have to be careful. If you have only one rigid arm, it might not make a big difference in the program, but if you have so many rigid arms, then you have to be careful. You have to be careful. So that is one option, one place where you have to be careful. And then what are the other places where you have to be careful? Let's take another example. Let's say these are this is a typical example that I use to teach the subject typical example that I use to teach the subject. And when you have a building like this, we need a lift core. We need a lift core. And we might have walls like that, might have walls like that. And this can be typical dimension for a lift is 3 meters, 3 meters. And you might get, let's say 2.5 meters. And here we have a gap of 2.5 meters. So we have 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, making 7.5. And we will then have 3 meters and 3 meters. May not be the ideal dimensions, but we consider this as an example. And if you have considered this direction wind, and that is the y direction wind, this is not good. Why? This wall is almost on the y direction center, but there is one wall. So to balance that wall, we need another wall here. Then you'll ask, can you provide concrete walls like that? Answer is yes. Because, generally, we expect 20 to 25% of the building to be services. So if you consider this building, there are how many panels? 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 panels. And if you want to add 25% of the area, how many panels you lose? You lose 4 panels. So this area will be the core. This area is the core, 4 panels, 25% of the area. And you'll ask, why 25%? Can't it be 10%? No, it's not possible. A very good architect might get it to around 22, 23%. A bad architect might get it to about 27, 28%. Then you'll ask, why it's so important? Then I had to ask, why do you construct the building? You construct the building because you like to rent it. You like to rent it. Now to rent, to get the maximum income from rent, the area you are renting should be maximum. So if you want the area to be rented maximum, then you must make sure the core area is minimum. But within the core, you have to have fire escape, lifts, electrical ducts, external voltage, then air conditioning, water supply, washrooms. What else? Sometimes even a small kitchen to make it more functional. And also you might need small storage area for the people who are doing the cleaning of the building. If people who are cleaning the building, so you like to give them a small space so that they can keep their buckets, brooms, everything within the code. So, which means we are competing each other to get things sorted out. And if the moment you decide to be generous, you are reducing the rentable space. So 25% is a good norm. 25% is a good norm. We like to keep it 25%. We like to keep it 25%. And then, if this is the case, about this direction, there are walls here. So we need some wall. And you can say y bar equal to sigma I y divided by sigma I, and that is y bar. And we like it to be 0 if you are measuring y from here. The answer 0 means when you take the second amount of area of all these walls that are resisting about this point, the second amount of area should be 0. Second amount of area multiplied by distance should be 0. And the moment you write this side is positive, this side is negative, then you can find this dimension x1. The moment you do that, you can find the dimension x1. And if you are not sure, refer to the book by Alex and Cole. There you can see how they are very clearly written the examples. And I think our note also has some examples, not real examples, but the equations are there. So basically, refer to any textbook. You can find this example equations. You refer to McGinley, you can find it there. And I think even in Moseley and Bundy, you can find those equations. And I also have showed the equations. So it's a very simple calculation. Like we find the center of mass, here we find the center of rigidity. And we like the center of rigidity to come as close as possible to the center. So we like the center of twist to come as close as possible to the center. So we like the center of mass to come as close as possible to the center. Sorry, I have kept it at the wrong direction. Sorry about that. And then this is number 2. And we need this sheet. Then you can ask another question. Where are you going to have the columns? Columns are here. Columns are here. Columns are here. And now the question comes. Do you need a column here? No, we don't need a column. Why? We have a wall. But on the other hand, if you think the wall is only 300 millimeter thick, we are in beams of 400. Then you might ask, okay, would I have a column of 400 by 400 there as a corner stiffer member? I says yes, if you want to have it. And if I'm having, I'll have 500 by 500. That's why. The reason is, if I'm having a wall of 300, then I would like to have a 500 column. Why? The beams coming here will be 400. So there will be 400. There will be 400. And if I have 500 column instead of 400, what happens is we get the reinforcement coming here, and these reinforcement can go straight. These can go whatever the direction, sometimes with some tanking, or what you do is you come with this beam and then have an additional reinforcement here, and then with all these we can accommodate the corner reinforcement. Because these are 400, here you got 500, here you got 300. Okay. So you have 300, 400, 500. Now we can accommodate everything. If you are having a column, have 500, 500. If the beams are 400 by 400, have a column of 500 by 500. That way, you can assure that the reinforcement can be fitted without cranking or with minimum cranking, which is very useful. So if you want to have it, then we have to have columns at these locations. Now we have a 30 meter by 24 meter tower. 30 meter by 25 meter tower. Then how do you model it? When you look at the structure, you can see it's possible to go for 2D modeling by considering, let's say this grid is A, B, C, D, E. This say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can see going in both directions. So if one option that we have is lump A and E. Lump shear walls on what? BCD. Lump it. Now we can create a 2D model. And let's say we are having 20 floors. No zoning, 20 floors, all the shear floors are continuing to the top, 20 floors. And we know it's having more than 10 floors, that means the lateral deformation behavior is important because part of the load will be carried by the shear walls, part of the loads will be carried by the frame. In the lower floors, shear wall will carry almost all the shear or all the forces, lateral forces, whereas in the top part of the building, the walls will become more flexible, and because of that, you'll find the frame also can carry significant frames also can carry significant lateral load. How to create a 2D model of the structure? Now we lump these 4. We get this. And if the column size is 1 meter, now you get 1 meter by 2 meters. You can't actually other way because then you are increasing the stiffness unnecessarily. You have done if you have just put 2 columns together. Then in this case, because their frames are so small on B and C, and also D, I have ignored the frames, the contribution of frames on B, C, D. I have considered only the distribution, contribution of frames A and E, contribution of frames A and E. Now we need another member. And if you want, you can have, what do you call, shell elements. Otherwise, you can, if you don't have shell elements, you will project it. And that is 3 beta. And then we connect it like this, representing that on the flow, you can't have different deformations because flow does not deform on its own plane, which means the flow must act as a rigid diaphragm or a rigid diaphragm. So you have to have something called rigid diaphragm. And the rigid diaphragm is represented, say that the deflection at any point on this plane in a given direction is the same because the structure is non-twisting. Structure is balanced, it's not twisting. So basically, you have a larger section here, 2 meters wide, but what is the axis of bending? Axis of bending is still that. So here what we have find is the second amount of area has been doubled only. So you can have these corrections at every flow. And so study stress to generate a flow like this and generate a column like this and then connect it. Again, you can see mathematical model is very different to the 3-dimensional structure that you want to analyze. Right. Now you can see now in the actual structure we get shear walls. We represent them by using rigid arms so that any deformation at the end of the shear wall will be the deformation in the slab. Now, so that is one option. Then it comes another problem. Now we can model like this. How do you apply loads onto the structure? You have to apply the loads. The answer is you don't have to worry about loads because you are trying to see the lateral behavior. But on the other hand, if you are doing a three-dimensional structure, you have to get the loads sorted out. So how do you apply the loads? You have one column here, here. Here you get 7.5 meters, you get 6 meters. And according to Eurocode, they go for a simple load transfer like this. For a simple load transfer like this, BS810, if you want, you can use that also because it gives a good set of tables that can be used. And there you say, so here you get another up to 0.875 and times LX. So basically you get the load acting as a uniform load, but the magnitudes are given by the coefficients indicating how to get the loads on the supporting beams. Eurocode does not go into that kind of sophistication because it's written as a general document that can be adopted by many countries, and then from country to country you can decide which one to be done. And in Sri Lanka we can have two options. One is to consider that it's the trapezoidal distribution. On the other hand, you can say it's based on the coefficients which are more accurate. Actually, this is more accurate than this one, but there is not as high as you think because there are other options to correct it. But so this is very easy when you are doing modeling. Here you have to input all these values, so it takes time. So many people use this one and some use this one, but this is better. Better does not mean that everybody will use it because of time that it consumes. So you can use table 316 of BS 8110 part 1, and then these values, sum is equal to these are given in handbook 2 euro. So in Eurocode, structural linear, Institution of Structural Engineers Guide, the documents, the Institution of Structural Engineers London documents. Documents give these tables, and if you look at your most of you from Moratuva, you look at your final year, the third year, so second year notes on concrete design, and you can find all those tables. So now we start. So basically, slab is a slab with 2-story and 10-story and 20-story and even 100-story. Slab is slab. What is the purpose of the slab? Support the vertical loads and safely transfer those loads onto the supporting loads. Can a slab make a structure stronger? Can a slab make a structure stronger? Answer is no. Slabs cannot make structures stronger. So, just model like this. You have a beam, your slab, we might model in such a way that, when you model, what actually happens is in your model, the slab will come to the middle, because in your model, unless you say this, it's just an offset. It will come to the middle. And if you have beams like this, then what will happen? Naturally, the structure will be stronger. And you get raw gases. So that's why you have to be very careful in modeling slabs. So what we generally do is we put something, a membrane, pot, right? So basically, what happens is you have a beam and a slab. So if you are going to model the slab, you have to say slab is cracked. Now, why do you say slab is cracked? Let's consider structure, beams and slabs and so on. All these are cracked. And the program, the slab behavior consider these as cracked. So if you are representing the slab as a structural member, then you must make sure it is cracked. And because of that, only 30% of the stiffness is applicable. Only 30% of 25 to 30% of the stiffness is applicable. So what you do is you go to set modifiers with the program and then adjust the stiffness. Adjust the stiffness. Go to set modifiers in the program and adjust the stiffness of the panel that is used to represent the slab. So basically what you do is, now when you're modeling, you have two options. I'll do a small diagram. One option is break it to this. And then say that they are all connected to these ones. Those are the primary and secondary beams. So you model the beam, the slab elements, and you ensure that there is connectivity to the beams. Now you are going to get a massive stiffness unless you say the slab elements have only 25 to 30% of the stiffness of the actual slab. Then you will be okay. So you set modifiers, reduce the stiffness of the slab by reducing the second moment of area of the slab. So we say set modifier, we say where the slab is represented is 0.3. 0.3 stiffness is reduced in both directions. Now you can see it's far better not to model these slabs, provided that you can get the correct load transfer by using some method. It can be manual method, some programs give automatic methods. For example, programs like ETABS, you can have this happening automatically. While the program is running, and MIDAS also, there are so many facilities. So you can see, starting from the slab, you have to be careful. If you do not adjust the stiffness for cracked concrete sections, you will be attracting unnecessary stiffness, which is not available in the real structure into your mathematical model. And if you don't have the correct stiffness distribution in your model, then it's a wrong mathematical model. So you have to be very careful. And one of the options that I always use with SAP 2000 is I simply do not model it, and I'll put all the loads on this. And then what you do is we put a membrane like that, and then another membrane like that. And you'll ask why? Because it's a rigid diaphragm. The rigid diaphragm. So if you have beams, only the beams can have some small element of flexural behavior and so on. But whereas the moment you actually represent each panel as a panel of equivalent, some stiffness, but connected only at the corners, and thickness same as actual. So this thickness same as actual, but out of mass less concrete, sorry, out of weightless concrete, weightless concrete, no mass, no weight in it, but mass is there. You ask why? We need a mass. We need a mass there because there is a slab. Slab has a mass, and mass is based on actual thickness. So because of that reason, you have to always think, and think. When you are making a mathematical model, always distinguish between mass and weight. And for every element, you have to make sure that you have got the weight right, because weight will contribute to the vertical load and also vertical load resistance. Whereas the mass is more important when you are considering the vibration characteristics of the structure, and vibrations will ensure that the building will shake laterally in X direction and Y direction. And we can also find the dynamic properties like natural period of vibration. Right. So basically, if you can get the steps right and then apply the loads onto the beams, how about the beams? And Eurocode gives some guidelines, but generally we can simply say beams are there. And beams are supporting the slab, and slab is actually doing a good service by assuring that people can use it, and also there's a rigid diaphragm. So it's a rigid diaphragm because we have it, and we have it everywhere. That means mass is distributed. Mass is distributed. And then mass is at the correct location that is. So once you have the mass, weight, what else? Columns, beams. So if you are doing a 3D-dimensional model, moment you model the slabs accurately, with proper load transfer, the beams and columns will not be a problem because the mass of the mass of the flow will be distributed, mass of the beams will be there, they get distributed, mass of the columns will be there, get distributed. And when it comes to the weight and the loads will primarily act on the slabs, and slabs we know loads are transferred to the 4 beams supporting the slab. So this way we can easily get most of the properties sorted out, except the true behavior of the structure. To get the true behavior of the structure, we have to again look at, has it got transfer plates, and has it got a good foundation? And what can you say about the foundation? So if it's a 10-story building, you simply say the lateral loads are all taken by the shear walls, frame does not take them. But still you can go for 3D model. Do the modeling and get the loads on the columns. And once you get the loads on the columns, what happens? We have to think about the foundations. And when you have foundation, you might have to think about the slabs, the piles or the rafts. So stretch footings will not work for these large buildings. So you need to have a set of piles. And here I can use say 1 meter diameter. We'll get 1 meter diameter piles, 1.2 diameter piles. So some of these rules are meant for very small piles and says 3 times diameter. Center to center, 3 times diameter. So you get 2 times diameter separation between the piles. And then when you look at this, what is meant by 3 times diameter is 3 meters apart. If they are 3 meters apart, 1 meter diameter piles. Then you find that the gap is 2 meters. And here we are saying, I'm going to break the bedrock. So don't try to break the bedrock very close to me. Why? Already this first pile shaft is filled with concrete and it's not very highly hardened concrete. It's just fresh concrete. So you have one socket going that way. And you try to do another socket here. This concrete is hardened. You are breaking the rock here. You can have problems. So we have geotechnical engineers have come up with this type of solutions, but they allow 2 times diameters, 50 times. So just ask your friends who are following geotechnical course, and they can explain more on this. And I will also get a guest lecture by Dr. Nalin De Silva so that he can explain all these things in greater detail. So the other option you have is a raft, and then the question comes, how do you model a raft and how do you model a pile? So how do you do that is, we'll model the column, we'll model the pile cap around it, we'll model the 2 columns by using elements like this. So we have represented the column, pile cap, piles. Now what surrounds the piles? Soil. How do you represent the soils? The spring. There are equations to calculate the spring mass. So you'll put some springs and represent the soil. And for these lateral springs, there are special ways. So I cover that separately because the stiffness values can vary like this. So it can become very strong and afterwards some if it is good soil, it can go vary from 10,000 to 200,000. So we call it Winkler Springs. Winkler Springs. So instead of modeling the soil with finite elements, we will have a simple representation. That means we are going to break the soil into different layers. For each layer, depending on the depth, we can have a lateral stiffness, and we'll analyze the structure and see whether it's going to deflect too much or okay. So this is pipe cap. Similarly, if you are going to have a raft, then you can make it cellular. So we make it cellular. And when you make it cellular, we can have laterite soil. Why? Laterite soil is a very strong soil and it's ideally suited for rough formations. But then, when you have land, you might have the water table somewhere. So if the water table is high, so if you have high water table, laterite soil contains about 30% clay, so we have to model it as a clay soil. On the other hand, the water table is very low. So if it is a strong soil, we go with, if sandy soil, we consider it as sandy. And if it's a whatever is low, then you'll find the laterite soil behaves more like sandy soil. When it is saturated, the laterite soils behave more like a clay soil. So depending on the depth of the neutral axis, sorry, depth of the water table, top of the wet water table, you have to make your own decision. And if most of the structure is going to be buried in good quality sand, you might consider. And if the water table is also lower, the good laterite soils having a lot of sand, then you model it as a set of springs, like this. So you have a, let's say, a rough foundation, a spring here, another spring here, spring here. And then model it. It's very easy, straightforward task. But when it comes to clay soil, that is high water table with laterite, you have to model the soil. The last one is, so you use three-dimensional modeling, and instead of modeling the soil as springs or anything, you will actually go for the real representation of clay soil with an area which is much larger than the footprint of your building, then only you can capture any effects of any effects of having softer material under the foundation. It's a good material, but it's little soft because it's a laterite soil subjected to high water table, because laterites contain lot of clay, some 30 to 35% clay. This clay behavior can dominate the behavior of the soil. Whereas if you have low water table, then the behavior of the sand will dominate, not the clay. And then we call it, we say, you can analyze it. Analyze the rough foundation by using winkless springs. So with that, shall I conclude? Engineer Kamala?
Yeah, Professor.
Yeah, so I have explained the fundamental
Yes.
aspects of modeling. So I gave little pauses because I just wanted to make sure we have time to understand what I said. So you can see it goes to very sophisticated level, that the type of soil, the same soil, the depth of the water table can decide whether it's going to behave more like a clay soil or more like a sandy soil. The sandy soil, very easy, springs. And you'll ask what is the spring constant, vertical, and we say it is 40 times factor of safety times bearing capacity. So that is the K of springs. And you'll get the answer in kilonewtons per meter cubed. But the lateral springs, the behavior is little different, and then there are guidelines, some empirical type guidelines to decide the lateral springs, and it can vary between 20,000 to 200,000. But when it comes to vertical springs, there's nothing called vertical springs for clay soil. You have to model the soil by using what you call solid elements, and in solid elements you have to tell the stiffness or the E value, elastic modulus of the soil. And if you have any patches where the elastic modulus is different, that can be represented under the with the soil. So with that, I conclude, and you can see, modeling does not mean creating an architectural model of the building. It is the mathematical model, and you have to be very careful with the weight, mass, and so on. And sometimes you cannot even detect the mistake, because sometimes the answers might look right. So because of that reason, be very careful when you are making a model. But we have seen engineers, they simply ignore all these important aspects. They are keen to get something on the screen of the computer by using a software, and they don't care about many things. And it's very dangerous, because you are going to use the answers of a careless model for design. And when you do that, there's a high chance the reviewers will detect it, and then it will not be good for your reputation. So these days you can see the designs are reviewed by independent parties. The clients have understood that all the designs may not be correct. The capabilities of design engineers can be very different. So whatever the firm that is designing, make sure the designs are reviewed. And if your model is wrong, model has mistakes, omissions, then it is embarrassing to see the reviewer pointing out those things in meetings. So when you're making a model, make sure it's an accurate model. Whenever you have extra components like rigid arms, you use a special concrete which has no mass, no weight, because it's a fictitious member provided to assure the program the change in stiffness that can take place or whatever the reason that you need the rigid arm. So with that, please stop. Engineer Kamala?
Yeah, Professor, there are two questions in the chat box. Shall I read?
Oh, yeah, of course, I'll take it, please.
Yeah, if the slab is using as crack, then is it same concept applicable to flat slab design?
No, flat slab design has two concepts. One is reinforced concrete flat slabs, which is not economical at all for Sri Lanka. Very expensive. But you can have pre-stressed concrete flat slabs. Pre-stressed concrete flat slabs are not cracked because pre-stressed means the full section is effective, so you don't get cracked. The first answer, what is transverse slab and transverse plates? Transverse slab and transverse plate, it has no difference. Slab is a plate. So what if you want, you can call it transverse slab or transverse plate. It's a plate. The problem is these plates that are coming up at 6th floor, 8th floor are really problematic because they have a massive weight that should be supported during construction. So because of that reason, I always prefer going for cellular transfer plates. Cellular transfer plates. Why footing design as inverted T? No, actually there are inverted T-type foundations, but if you look at the behavior of the footing, individual footing, it is like, you know, you get a concentrated load on the column shaft, which is distributed to get a column giving a load which is distributed everywhere. So it's resisted here. It's like, so you get something like this, and finally going into this. So basically, it's like inverted T. So it's an inverted T. So basically, the whole idea is you get a concentrated load from the column, which is resisted as a distributed load by the soil. And then you'll ask why you need it to be distributed, because the maximum allowable deflection is 25 millimeters or 1 inch. And so if you want to control the deformation of the soil to 1 inch, then that is the load that you need to limit the deformation of the soil to 25 millimeters or 1 inch is called the bearing capacity. So these are under service conditions, it's a bearing capacity. Whereas when you consider ultimate limit state, the soil strength can be 4 times bearing capacity or 5 times bearing capacity. Right. So basically, the whole idea is you limit the deflection to 25 millimeters, and the load that is needed to create that deformation is called bearing capacity, and that is a service condition. So the actual strength of the soil can be 3 to 4 times more than that. But we don't use it in normal situations. But when you are doing designs for Euroports, if you want, you can go into those details. But then you have to be really good with geotechnical engineering to understand the behavior under short-term and long-term conditions. So you have to be really good with geotechnical engineering. Otherwise, you must do it not on your own. Always get the services of a geotechnical engineer who understands the real behavior, so that you will do that type of designs on limited method in collaboration with a geotechnical engineer. So in SAP 2000, can we use cardinal points to offset? Yes, you can do many things, but what is the point? I mean, are you going to do an architectural model or a structural model? So if you are doing a structural model, what is important is the reasonable representation of the stiffness. And in a building, stiffness comes from columns and beams, not from slabs. So make the slab negligible, but transfer the correctness. So that is my way of thinking. Okay, with that, shall I conclude? Engineer
Yeah,
Kamala?
Professor. Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor.
Yeah.
Actually, I call Engineer Renuka Gamage to deliver the vote of thanks. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Good evening to everyone. It is an honor for me get this opportunity to thank you all on behalf of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee. Our work may not be capable to communicate our sense of gratitude for Professor Thisenjaya Singha for your informative presentation on 3D modeling. It was very interesting, useful, and excellent presentation, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your hard work and
Thank you very much.
the work carried out for the betterment of engineers and for the world. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Hello.
Yes. Yes.
Renuka, yeah, Engineer.
Okay, sir. I will continue, madam. To deserve our appreciation to Engineer Kamala Gunawardana, Chairperson of Knowledge Sharing Subcommittee, for getting the webinar arrangements successfully. Let me express my sincere thanks to Secretary of Civil Engineering Sectional Committee, Engineer Manjula, and the I must mention my deep sense of appreciation to IESL Secretariat and IT team for Accordingly, dear sir, madam, and my dear colleagues, you are the success of this lecture series. Then we expect your active participation in our upcoming lectures too. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you very much, Professor, and to you all. Have a good night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.